risen from the iceberg. My boomerang flew by his side while I carried away enemies with my trusty blade. I even took down the whole Fire Nation airship armada.
Hello you beautiful people and welcome back to a new episode on my channel. First of all, I hate Paramount Animation. And I mean, I don't particularly like Nickelodeon either because let's be honest, they only know how to make 3 types of movies and those are family friendly, Minions and then Minions again. But at least Illumination seems to understand the fact that they have other franchises and every now and then they gave them the spotlight, like Sing or Secret Life of Pets. They are not good by any means, but at least Illumination gives them the space to breathe and grow. Paramount Animation on the other hand, they have the exact opposite problem. They have SpongeBob, they have TMNT, and what else? Well, it doesn't fucking matter because he's thrown in a basement, locked the door, and then burned the house down.
You burned my house to the ground! My family's dead! What do I do? I'm gonna find you, fucker. I'm gonna find
Paramount Animation don't really give a fuck about any other franchise that is not the Yellow Sponge or the Green Chicky Chan.
Who's next? Huh?
So in order to prove my point, let's play a game. I will call now 3 animated movies made by Paramount Animation. If you know any of these 3 movies, you will leave a like. So, Under the Boardwalk, Rumble, Tiger's Apprentice. Wait, I just now noticed that this is actually hurting me more than it's hurting them. Typical Paramount Animation style, I guess.
I bet she's the nicest, gentlest, warmest person ever. Oh, look at that. I've been impaled.
And that's exactly what frustrates me a lot about Paramount Animation. It's not the fact that they don't have original ideas or interesting ideas, it's the fact that they don't really give a fuck about them. They don't give them space, they don't give them nothing. I mean, for Under the Boardwalk, they released the trailer 2 weeks before the movie. I mean, how do you even do that? Those levels of unbotherment should be fucking studied, because to not give a fuck at that level about not only your product but the work of so many talented artists, that's embarrassing to say the least. So imagine me sitting here hearing that they are making a new Avatar movie. Avatar, which is one of the greatest shows ever made, live action animation, doesn't matter. They are making an animated movie about it. The studio known for 2 things: milking SpongeBob and killing anything else in sight. And keep in mind, Avatar is not one of those franchises that you can just throw around. It's one of the rare occasions when a show ascends the channel, the medium, and touches people. People grew up with this. Because this is a story that has incredible characters, a rich world, complex themes, and most importantly, an audience that was waiting for this project for years. And what does Paramount do with this incredible occasion? They threw it on streaming, proving yet again that Paramount Animation, it's the worst animated studio we have. And I mean, they don't even animate this. Flying Bark Studios did. And all due respects for that studio. So the question isn't just whether Paramount Animation can make a good Avatar movie. The question is if they can understand what made Avatar connect with so many people when it was on TV. And that's where things got interesting. So let's talk about the long-awaited So the movie starts with Aang back at his temple, and immediately the film gives us a very interesting version of Aang. Like, now he's the Avatar, he's the hero who saved the world, but at the same time he's also someone who has lost everything that made him who he is. The air nomads are gone, his culture is gone, his people are gone, and now Aang is trying to hold on the last remaining pieces of that identity. He's surrounded by the history of his people, but he's also painfully aware that he's one of the last people who can actually carry that history forward. And I think that's a really strong way to start the movie, because before Aang is the Avatar, before he's the hero, before he's the person responsible for protecting the world, he's an air nomad, and that's the foundation of who he is. And the movie starts by showing us a character who is trying to reconnect with a part of himself that he lost. And then, all of a sudden, some thieves show up. And this is where we get our first big action sequence of the movie. And I have to say, this scene immediately shows that Flying Bark Studios knows what the hell they are doing. The animation, it's fantastic. The movement, it's fast, fluid and energetic, and the action actually feels like it's coming from the characters themselves. Aang doesn't fight like a generic superhero, he fights like an airbender. There's a sense of movement and playfulness to the way he moves, but there's also this incredible power underneath it. And the scene also introduces us to the Denied, and they know how to fight damn well. But also in this scene, the movie reminds us of one of the most important parts of Aang's character. Nobody gets left behind. That's Aang, and honestly, it's a very Batman thing to do, but Aang sees someone in danger and his first instinct isn't to ask whether they deserve to be saved. He just saves them, because that's what he believes the Avatar should do. And I think this moment it's important because it tells us something about the kind of person Aang has become. Because he has lost his home, his people, but he never lost his principles. And maybe that's the real connection between Aang and his culture. Even if the air nomads are gone, their philosophy is still alive. Through him, he carries them with him, and the idea becomes even more important as the story continues. After this, we return to the city they've built, and that's where we finally meet Katara. And damn, Katara is looking good. And it's also really nice to see the characters older and more established, like we're not watching the original team Avatar anymore. These are people who have lived through a war, saved the world, and now have to figure out what comes next. After all of that, we get Aang having small funny conversations with the ancestors, trying to find out what the thieves really want and where's that map going. And that's how we discover the legend of Sona. And that gives Aang a new purpose. He now has a mission. But before he leaves, he sends messages to his friends, like Zuko gets his own funny message, Toph gets one, and of course, Sokka gets one too. And I just like that we're bringing the team back together, and I love the fact that they are pretty much the same. They never change. I mean, they are older and more mature, but Toph is Toph, Sokka is Sokka, and Zuko it's Zuko. Like, what? I like it. It's fun. And the fact that we are getting to see these characters again, but they are not simply repeating the same story that we've already watched. Now, obviously, they are older, different and changed, but they come back together and the chemistry is still there. The original team Avatar, it's slowly reforming. And for Aang, I think there's something deeply meaningful about that. At the beginning of the movie, he's standing alone in his temple surrounded by the remains of a culture that no longer exists. He's trying to find his home in the past. But by the end of the opening chapter, he's starting to build a new one. And maybe Aang can't bring back the air nomads. Maybe he can't restore the world he lost, but he can choose the people he surrounds himself with. And he can choose who he protects. And he can carry the values of his people into the future, because home isn't always a place. Sometimes home is the people who choose to stand beside you. And for Aang, that means Katara, Sokka, Toph, and Zuko.
Was the friends we made along the way. Help!
So after talking about the first chapter, what can I say? The movie looks good. Sometimes it might look a bit AI, maybe it's just me and my washed brain, but it feels a little AI. Don't get me wrong, the animation, it's incredible. Flying Bark Studios, you proved yourself a worthy studio. All my respects. I wasn't expecting much after that Wolf movie.
Okay, we'll make a break for it.
Help!
But now I'm sure they can do whatever they want if given enough time and a budget. That's about the end. But going back to Aang, the movie so far gets the characters, gets the comedy, and gets the action. So what's next? So Aang's journey continues when he travels into the mountains, following the clue he received from the ancestor. And I have to say, it's kind of funny that even the Avatar has a hard time climbing a mountain, because you would think that being able to control the elements would make this shit easier. Well, apparently not. But moving on, eventually Aang reaches this structure made of ice, and if you've been paying attention to the story, you can probably guess what's waiting for him inside. Spoiler, it's another airbender. So Aang does the usual stick and breaks the ice, which obviously makes the mountain collapsing on itself. And this is where we get another really cool action sequence, with some fantastic airbending and also firebending and also rules of nature bending.
It's another one of her tricks.
There's a giant hole in the box. How is that a trick?
The important thing is that this scene is meant to show Aang's character. Why? Because Aang is saving someone he barely knows. Someone who has just met, but Aang doesn't hesitate. He sees someone in danger and he immediately tries to save them. That's Aang. Nobody gets left behind. So the mountain, is trying to give the last blow on the airbending community. And then we get this small scene where this mysterious airbender is using his power to stop the mountain, which implies that he's extremely powerful, but also give us enough time for the Avatar crew to show up and save them. And suddenly we're sitting inside a tent trying to figure out exactly what the hell is going on. And this is where the movie starts giving us more pieces of the bigger story. We learn more about Tagah, and also his name and his past. But the movie doesn't dump all of that information on us at once. Instead, it gives us little hints, like when Tagah wakes up and sees Toph. He immediately tries to attack her, and that's when you start realizing just how much hatred and mistrust he carries towards other tribes. The rest of the group has to calm him down before things get completely out of control. It's not a huge exposition scene explaining the entire history of the air nomads and the earth tribes. It's just a small moment, but it tells us a lot about Tagah. This is a man who doesn't trust outsiders, and he has very good reasons for that. As the journey continues, Aang learns more about the air nomads and the culture he lost, and most of what he discovers comes from Tagah. And this is where the movie becomes surprisingly bittersweet. Aang is finally getting the opportunity to learn about his own culture. He's discovering the beauty of the air nomads, he's learning about the tradition, philosophies, and ways of life that he never had the chance of experience fully because he lost all of that when he was a kid. But he's also learning about all of this from someone who has a completely different relationship with that culture. Because Tagah doesn't see the air nomads as peaceful people who should simply live alongside everyone else. He sees them as victims. And that difference in perspective is what makes Tagah such an interesting character. Aang believes that the different tribes have to work together. He believes that the world can't be divided forever. He believes that people from different cultures can coexist. Tagah doesn't. He's much more skeptical. He's seen what happened to the airbenders, and his conclusion is completely different from Aang's. To Tagah, trusting other tribes is dangerous. And I think his philosophy can basically be summed up as, if you want to prevent another genocide, you have to make sure you are powerful enough to commit one first. Don't get me wrong, it's a horrible idea, but I understand why he believes it. And that's what makes him interesting. He's not simply evil, he's someone who has experienced trauma and reached the opposite conclusion to Aang. Aang looks at the destruction of his people and says, we need to bring the world together. Tagah looks at the same destruction and says, we need to make sure nobody can hurt us again. And that creates a really interesting conflict between the two, because Aang is trying to rebuild his culture without abandoning his beliefs in cooperation, and Tagah is trying to protect his people by making sure they have the power to protect themselves. And then we get one of my favorite action sequences. The Avatar team is traveling in this hot air balloon from the Fire Nation, who are basically doing everything they can to keep the balloon in the air because they are being attacked by the Denied Ones. And these guys aren't just attacking for the fun, they are after the stuff that can give them power. So while the Avatar team is desperately trying to keep the air balloon in the air, Aang and Tagah, they have to clear the path. And this is where we get this fantastic sequence where Aang and Tagah work together in this almost dance-like motion where they are bending together, moving together, and destroying the tornadoes that are blocking their way. And I absolutely love that scene. It's chaotic, it's visually incredible, it's exactly the kind of action that I wanted from the Avatar franchise, because the bending doesn't feel like two characters just throwing magic attacks at each other. It feels like movement, it feels like choreography, it feels like two people who understand the elements working together. And for a moment, Aang and Tagah are completely in sync. Their differences don't matter, they are both trying to save the same people. They are both using their abilities for the same purpose. And it gives us a glimpse of what Aang believes the world could become. Different people, different culture, different abilities, working together instead of fighting each other. But of course that doesn't last. There is this small argument that Aang has with Katara, because Aang is letting all of those emotions and all of that connection with Tagah taking over him, making him not realize what he has in front of him, this big family. So when Katara says let's go home, Aang is like, you don't understand the pain I'm going through, and I need this. This is when Aang goes alone to find what he's been searching for, the stuff that could help bring back more airbenders, the thing that could potentially give the air nomads a future. And while Aang is searching for it, Tagah attacks the rest of the Avatar crew, and he wins. But the action scene is just magical, as are all the action scenes in this movie. But this is the moment where Tagah finally takes control of the situation. But then he finds Aang with the staff of Sonam, and now there's nowhere left to run. The two of them finally come face to face, and this is where the conflict becomes personal, because Aang isn't fighting someone who simply hates him. He's fighting someone who shares his trauma, someone who has seen the same destruction, someone who wants the same basic thing: security for his people, but has come to a completely different conclusion about how to achieve it. And then we get their fight, and Aang loses. And honestly, I think that's important, because Aang isn't supposed to win this argument through strength. He's supposed to win it through his beliefs. Because Tagah believes that strength comes from being willing to destroy your enemies before they have the chance to destroy you. And Aang believes that strength comes from refusing to become the thing you're afraid of. And that's really the heart of this chapter. Aang has finally found another Airbender. He's finally discovering the culture he lost. He's finally finding a sense of belonging. But now he's being forced to ask what that home should actually look like. Should it be a home built on fear? Should it be a home protected by isolation and violence? Or can it be a home that exists alongside everyone else? Aang's answer is obvious. He doesn't want to rebuild the air nomads just to create another isolated tribe. He wants to rebuild them while preserving the values that made them who they are. And that's what separates him from Tagah, because Tagah wants to make sure the airbenders never become victims again. Aang wants to make sure that in protecting themselves, the airbenders don't become the very thing they once feared. But Tagah doesn't see it that way. He takes the power for himself, and then he goes to the denied ones. He gives them the power they've been searching for, but there's a catch. They're not truly free. They're now under Tagah's control. And suddenly Tagah has exactly what he always wanted: an army. An army of people with power, an army that he believes can finally guarantee the survival of his people. And this is where the tragedy of Tagah becomes even clearer. It started with a fear of losing his people. He wanted to protect them, but somewhere along the way, protecting became control, and control became power, and power became the very thing that could turn him into the threat he was afraid of. And I think that's exactly what makes Aang's journey so compelling. At the beginning of the movie, he was looking for a home that he had lost. Now he's discovering that finding a home isn't enough. He has to decide what kind of home he wants to build. Aang has the opportunity to rebuild the air nomads, but the question is, what does that future look like? Is it a future where the air nomads hide from everyone else? It's a future where they build an army? It's a future where they use fear to guarantee their own survival? Or is it a future where the air nomads can exist alongside everyone else? Aang chooses the last option, and that's why his conflict with Tagah works. They're not fighting because one of them wants the air nomads to survive and the other doesn't. They both want to protect their people. They both want to make sure the past never repeats itself. The difference is that Tagah believes the only way to prevent another tragedy is to become powerful enough to control everyone around him. Aang believes that the only way to truly honor the air nomads is to preserve their values and their beliefs: peace, balance, and cooperation. And that's what makes this chapter so interesting, because Aang starts the movie looking for the home he lost, but now he's discovering that finding a home isn't enough. Sometimes you have to decide what kind of home you are willing to build, and that's a much harder question. Okay, movie, I'm following. You are a bit rushed, let's be honest with ourselves, but you are not bad. The base, it's there. I like the characters, I like the interactions, even though, unfortunately, since it's such a big cast and the movie is so short, it's hard to give them enough time to explore every single character. Most of them are there for the joke, like Zuko. It's Zuko. He doesn't really trust anyone, but at the same time, he wants to help.
I don't say this very often, but Sokka's right.
Thank you.
Katara is very skeptical about all of this. Sokka, it's funny as always. And then you have Toph, which was one of my favorite characters, and I like her attitude here also. But she's mostly here to kick some ass and then be a fangirl.
He smells good for an old guy.
Ew.
What? My senses tell me this guy is pretty attractive.
Stop.
Someone else confirm.
This is serious.
What does attractive even mean?
Just give me a straight confirmation. Is he attractive?
He's very attractive.
Huh?
I forgive you, Tagah.
That's her plot. But I get it. I'm just happy to see them at this point. I'm so curious how this movie is gonna wrap up. So after everything that happened with Tagah, Aang is completely lost. He spent the entire movie trying to find a home. He wanted to reconnect with the air nomads. He wanted to understand his culture. He wanted to find other airbenders. And now, after finally finding them, everything is falling apart. He has found the people and the culture he thought he had lost forever, only to discover that the person who was supposed to help rebuild that culture has now turned against him. And then Aang gets the chance to speak with Sonam. And this is where we finally understand the story behind everything that's happened. Sonam explained that the air nomads always believed in peace. They believed that the different tribes could coexist without constantly fighting each other. The air nomads didn't want to rule the other nations. They didn't want to conquer anyone. They wanted to live alongside everyone else. But the world was changing. The Earth tribe was creating something different, a separate society, a separate tribe made specifically for Earthbenders. And slowly the world began dividing itself again. And this is where Tagah's story becomes even more tragic. Sonam gave Tagah power. She trusted him. She believed that Tagah could help protect the air nomads and help build a better future. But then Tagah witnessed the death of so many airbenders. He saw people he cared about being killed, and something inside him broke. He stopped believing that peace was enough. He started believing that violence was the only language the world understood. So he stole the staff, and eventually he turned against Sonam. Sonam had no choice but to trap him in the ice. And suddenly everything we've seen from Tagah makes sense. He's not fighting because he simply wants to destroy the world. He's fighting because he's terrified of losing his people again. And that's what makes him such an interesting villain. Because Tagah isn't completely wrong about the dangers of the world. The world really is dangerous. The air nomads really were almost wiped out. And Aang really did lose everything. Tagah's mistake isn't understanding the problem. It's believing that fear and violence are the only possible solutions. He's allowed his trauma to completely define his ideology. And that's where he becomes the opposite of Aang. Because Aang has experienced the exact same trauma. Aang lost his people. He lost his culture. He woke up in a world where everyone he knew was already gone. But Aang looked at that pain and came to a completely different conclusion. Aang said, we need to bring people together. Tagah said, we need to make sure nobody can ever hurt us again. And that difference is what drives the entire final act of the movie. Aang, meanwhile, it's completely broken. He almost gives up, and this is by far the lowest point of his journey. Because Aang has spent the entire movie trying to find his home, and now he has to confront the possibility that maybe there is no home left to find. He finally found another airbender. He finally discovered the culture he lost, and finally found something that could give the air nomads a future. And now it's all being taken away from him again. But then Katara comes through, and of course he doesn't do it alone. The entire crew comes together to save Aang, and I think that moment it's incredibly important, because Aang has spent the entire movie searching for the air nomads, but what he actually discovered is that he already has a family. He has Katara, he has Sokka, he has Toph, and he has Zuko. He has the people who choose to stand beside him. And when everything else is taken away, that's what matters. Because maybe Aang's biggest mistake was thinking that finding his culture meant finding his home. But home isn't just a culture. Home is also the people who refuse to leave you behind. And then we get this really funny scene where all the crew is having a conversation about what to do next. And everybody's like, okay, so we're gonna stand here forever. So everybody pick a dead turtle, because those islands were actually dead turtles. So everybody pretty much gives up in some way or another. But then Aang meditates. And through meditation and a giant sea monster, they enter the spirit world. But of course there's a problem. They're running out of time. And while Aang and the crew are trying to figure out what to do, the situation outside is getting worse. And we are running out of time. Which brings us to the question, who the hell is going to help us now? And ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce Gorilla Vark. Or Gorilla Vark, I'm not entirely sure, but I absolutely love this character. He's almost like this strange genie-like figure who appears when the Avatar and the crew needs him most, and with his help they are able to reach the city, but he's extremely funny. And the way he accepts to help the crew, just look at this.
Well, when you put it like that, it does make more sense.
Yeah, he's like that. I mean, he came in the picture for 3 minutes and he's just the highlight. I loved every single scene with it. But now everything is ready for the final confrontation. And holy shit, This is where the movie goes absolutely crazy. Imagine there is this big ass temple slowly falling on the Republic City. And the final battle between the Avatar crew and the Denied Ones, now empowered with bending, is exactly the kind of action scene I wanted from this movie. You got the entire crew fighting together, everyone has their moment, and then at the center of it all, you have Aang fighting Tagah. But what makes this battle so interesting isn't simply who's stronger, is what they're actually fighting for. They're not just fighting over power, they're fighting over ideology. Because as I said, Tagah believes that the only way to protect your people is through strength. And Aang believes that the only way to truly honor the air nomads is to preserve their values. Tagah wants to build a world where nobody can even hurt the airbenders again. Aang wants to build a world where people don't have to be afraid of each other in the first place. And that's what makes the final fight work so well. Every punch, every blast, every attack, it all represents something. It's not just, I'm the good guy and you're the bad guy. No. It's, I believe this is the only way to save the people I love. And that's a much more interesting conflict, because both of these characters are fighting for something they genuinely believe in. Tagah is fighting out of fear, Aang is fighting out of hope. Tagah believes that the only way to prevent another genocide is to make sure his people have enough power to destroy anyone who threatens them. Aang believes that if you rebuild your people through fear and violence, then you've already lost every value you are trying to protect. And that's the real battle. Not Aang versus Tagah, but fear versus hope, isolation versus unity, violence versus peace. And then the battle also gives us a really nice moment with Kalik. Kalik, for those of you who don't know, she started on the side of the Denied Ones. She was the one Aang saved. And as the battle continues, she begins to realize that maybe Tagah's vision isn't the future she actually wants. And by the end, she chose to join the other side. But unfortunately, because the movie is so short, we don't really have enough time to spend with Kalik and her development. But in the few short scenes we got of her, I really like her, because she shows that people aren't necessarily locked into the ideology they were born into. People can change, people can question what they've been taught, and people can look at the person they are following and realize maybe this isn't the future I want. And sometimes choosing the right side means admitting that you're wrong. And then we get back to Aang and Tagah. The final confrontation, and Tagah has now all the power. The action, it's carrying so hard in this movie. But because this review is getting longer than the actual movie, let's go to the part where Tagah is defeated. But what's interesting is that Aang doesn't simply destroy him. Instead, Tagah is forced to confront the truth. They were fighting the same battle. They both wanted to protect their people. They both wanted to prevent another tragedy. They both wanted to make sure their nomads would survive. The difference was how they believed that could happen. Tagah believed that survival required violence, and Aang believed that survival required unity. And in the end, Tagah finally understands that the two of them weren't fighting for completely different things. They were fighting for the same people. They just lost sight of what they were actually trying to protect. And I think that's the emotional climax to the entire movie. Because Aang's victory isn't just about defeating Tagah. It's about proving that his way of thinking can survive. That you can protect your people without abandoning your principles. That you can rebuild without becoming consumed by fear. That you can remember the past without allowing it to control your future. And then we are getting to the actual ending, where Aang and the crew are rebuilding the city. And I love it. Because the movie doesn't end with Aang simply returning to the home he lost. He doesn't get his old life back, because he can't. The air nomads are still gone. The past is still the past. Instead, he builds something new. A new home, a new community, a place where different cultures can exist together, and a place where people can celebrate their differences instead of being afraid of them. And that's where the movie finally brings everything together. At the beginning, Aang was looking for the home he lost. In the second chapter, he found the people and the culture he thought he had lost forever. But in the final chapter, he realizes something much more important. You can't always go home. Sometimes you have to build a new home. And that's the real journey Aang has been on this entire time. He thought he was searching for the air nomads, but really he was searching for a place where he belonged. And he finds it. Not in the ruins of the past, not in the forgotten temples, not even in the air nomads themselves. He finds it in the people standing beside him. And you know who they are. But in case you don't, they are Katara, Sokka, and Zuko. I just love saying their names. And those are the people who chose to fight alongside him. And eventually, in the city they're rebuilding together, Aang doesn't restore the world that existed before. He creates something new. And that's why I think the final image of the city being rebuilt, with people coming together and celebrating their different cultures, it's so important. Because Aang's story was never really about bringing back the past, It was about carrying the best parts of the past into the future. Their nomads might have been destroyed, but their values don't have to die with them. Their belief in peace, in balance, in people can live together, because those ideas survive through Aang. And ultimately, that's what Avatar: The Last Airbender it's always been about. Not about which nation is strongest, not about which bender is the most powerful, but about whether we choose to let fear define us, or whether we choose to build something better. Tagah wanted to protect his people by making sure nobody could ever hurt them again. Aang chose to protect his people by making sure they never lost themselves. And by the end of the movie, Aang finally understands what home really means. Home isn't the place you lost, home isn't even the place you were born. Home is the place you choose to build, and the people you choose to build it with. And maybe that's the most beautiful thing about Aang's journey. He started this movie trying to find the home he lost, and ended it by creating one that never existed before. So that was the last chapter. And honestly, I think the movie was pretty great. I mean, honestly, damn good. Very impressed with it. And maybe this is why I'm so frustrated with Paramount Animation and how they function. Because this is a funny, beautiful, entertaining, action-packed movie. And yet Paramount sended this movie straight into the pits of streaming. Why? This movie deserved better. This movie deserved to be seen by people in cinemas. And yet Paramount Animation just doesn't trust one of their biggest franchises, keep in mind, because some of these action scenes were made to be seen on the big screen. And also, unfortunately, this movie, as some of you know, got leaked, but I can't really blame anyone for that particular thing, so that was just a fun fact. But I think the biggest problem this movie has is that it's a bit rushed, and by that I mean very rushed. I mean, honestly, I think this movie could have been easily a 2-hour movie, if not even 2.5 hours, because there were so many ideas. I really wanted the movie to give more time being explored. Like, I really wanted to spend more time with Aang and the air nomads. I really wanted to spend more time with Tagah. I really wanted to spend more times with all the new characters. I really wanted to spend more times with the world itself. Because this movie has these great ideas, but it feels like they can't focus on one because they need to wrap up this movie as fast as possible. And so you leave so much open space that shouldn't really been there in the first place. Like, watching this movie feels like the filmmakers had this big grand idea, and then all of a sudden somebody said, okay, we need to release this movie as fast as possible, so everybody wrap up, let's go home. Because I really believe underneath this great movie could have been a perfect movie, maybe even the start of a new franchise. But unfortunately the movie has to suffer because of the way it was handled. And I really want Paramount Animation to look at the response this movie got and think one single thought. People are still interested in the Avatar franchise. And I might say now more than ever, because out there is still an audience that wants to see Aang, that wants to see Katara, that wants to see Zuko, that wants to see Toph, and most importantly, that wants to see Appa. You thought I was gonna say Sokka, don't you? Easy to fool, what can I say? Besides all of the old characters, there are so many new characters you can explore, so many worlds, so many possibilities. So Paramount Animation, please, if you understand anything from this movie, not from this video, because nobody from Paramount Animation is gonna watch this video, is that we care and we want more quality. So Paramount, please give these movies the time they need, the budget they need, and the artists they need to breed and become the movies we all know they can become eventually. And most importantly, give Avatar the respect that this franchise earned. Because besides all of my complaints, I really like this movie. I had a great time watching it, and I genuinely hope we get more of this franchise. And talking about the Avatar franchise, we are getting a new show in October, if I'm not mistaken, and I can't wait to talk about it. But until then, thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment. Tell me what you think about Avatar, about the franchise, about the movie, about the future. Thank you so much, and see you in the next episode. Sooner than later, I hope. Bye.
I know we haven't known each other very long, but I love you! You don't have to say it back!